Stephanie White drew up the flip-flop on July 8th, and in Phoenix, Kelsey Mitchell went and made it look like a plan instead of a prayer. If you're just joining, Indiana's whole West Coast swing has been about protecting Caitlin Clark's back and still trying to compete on a squeezed schedule. Clark missed time, came back against LA on restricted minutes, and White's staff mapped out the split for the back-to-back. Sit Aliyah Boston for the Sparks game, then bring Boston back and hold Clark out against Phoenix.
This is Fever Daily. Tonight we grade that flip-flop against a real result. Dig into what the step back says opponents are actually doing to this offense. And yeah, Justine Pissott's an ace now. Sarah, start me in Phoenix. We're staying on Fever Star Injury Watch. Follow the show and you won't miss what comes next.
From Scott Horner at Indianapolis Star.
The Indiana Fever rally late after struggling early in the fourth quarter of a 92-89 win over the Phoenix Mercury in WNBA action. Kelsey Mitchell has 29 points with 8 assists, Aliyah Boston 21 with 9 rebounds, Ty Harris 15, and Lexi Hall 10 for Indiana.
Kelsey Mitchell, 29 and 8, and the layup with 10.1 seconds left to put them up for good. Down 10 in the fourth, and they claw it back, 92-89.
And here's the part that matters. Clark sat, Boston came back, and Mitchell still dragged them across the line. That's the flip-flop working pretty much exactly the way White drew it up.
Right, but I keep coming back to, did they fix anything, or did Mitchell just bail them out again? 29 points papers over a lot.
Fair worry, but look at the box. Boston 21 and 9, Ty Harris chipping in 15, Lexi Hall with 10. Joey, that reads like a closing unit, not just Mitchell playing hero.
Okay, Ty Harris with 15. Without Clark on the floor, I'll take that. That was the engine holding up on a night it had every excuse to stall.
Grant Young, writing in Sports Illustrated.
This decision makes a lot of sense, since the ultimate goal is ensuring that both stay healthy through this stretch and throughout the season, as opposed to the Fever trying to do everything necessary to win both games of this West Coast road trip, which ends with a game against the Las Vegas Aces in Las Vegas on July 12th.
So the flip-flop actually happened. Boston sat the Sparks, Clark sat Phoenix, just like White drew it up on July 8th. And Kelsey Mitchell led a fourth quarter comeback anyway.
Right, so we're not grading a whiteboard anymore. White told Chloe Peterson neither star plays both legs of the back-to-back, and that's exactly what we got.
And I love that they protected both bodies through a West Coast back-to-back instead of chasing 2 road wins. That feels like a team that believes its window is real and can resist the July panic.
The plan held. One Phoenix comeback doesn't answer the next question, though. Can a Mitchell-led closing group become part of who they are? Circle City Spin writes,
Doing so would have required waiving a player and opening up a standard roster spot. And Tuesday was fittingly the final day for the Fever to move on from a player on an unprotected contract and not have their deal count in full for the remainder of the season. While that dynamic gave the team more options, Indiana opted not to match Pissott's offer.
So the roster math from Monday finally lands, and it lands ugly. Pissott's an ace now. Indiana didn't match, didn't cut anybody. They just got thinner.
Vegas dropped a standard contract qualifying offer. Indiana had until 5 p.m. Eastern on Tuesday to match. And matching meant waiving somebody. White said it plainly. They didn't feel like they could open the roster spot.
And here's the part that stings. Tuesday was the last window to get out cheaply. After that, any waived contract counts in full. So they waited and decided nobody was worth moving to keep the kid they drafted and developed.
She was a second-round pick out of Vanderbilt. 10 preseason minutes against the Liberty, 8 points, and never active in the regular season. For the nightly rotation, nothing changes. For the development pipeline, that's an asset walking into a division rival's building.
The Aces, a team we just beat in Vegas, now has somebody who sat in our practices. That's the detail that gets me. After watching Indiana look completely out of sorts against the Sparks, I have to ask, have opponents figured out the scheme, or was that more about who was and wasn't on the floor?
Honestly, it's a little of both, which is why it doesn't get fixed overnight. Against the Sparks, Indiana didn't have Aliyah Boston because of the load management call before the Phoenix leg of the back-to-back, and Caitlin Clark was still on a minutes limit coming off the injury layoff. She played just 16 minutes. Take Boston's size out of the paint, and LA ended up with 60 points in the paint and forced 16 Fever turnovers, per the Indy Star recap. You can't just draw around that when your two most important players are basically operating at half speed. The warning signs were there before Wednesday, too. Per SI, Indiana has allowed 100 or more points 8 times this season. One more, and they tie the all-time WNBA record set by the 2024 Dallas Wings, with 23 games still left. Opponents know Indiana's defense is the pressure point. Swish Appeal noted that even with a net rating just under +6, the Fever are only 7th offensively, so when the defense breaks and the turnovers pile up, there's not enough margin to cover it. The offense looks feast or famine because the stops aren't coming, and live ball turnovers are wrecking the rhythm before the half-court stuff can even get going.
So if the defense is the root cause, is this personnel, or is Indiana running something opponents can pick at, like hunting specific matchups?
There's some of both there. Earlier this season, Portland went right at Clark in defensive switches, and Sophie Cunningham said out loud that Indiana was basically playing one defensive scheme. That was her challenge to teammates to get more versatile. CBS Sports give Indiana a C at midseason because of the defensive ceiling, not because the Clark-Mitchell-Boston trio doesn't work on offense. With Boston back in the middle, Phoenix was the first check on whether they could restore that paint presence and get the turnovers down. If those issues keep showing up, that all-time record chase becomes a very real second-half storyline.
Got thoughts on today's show? A Fever story we should be following or a correction we need to make? Send us a note at Indiana Fever Daily Fancast at lanternpodcasts.com. What we're watching next? Indiana's West Coast road trip wraps up July 12 against the Aces in Las Vegas. You'll find links to every story we mentioned today in the show notes, so if something caught your ear, you can dig in there. That's Indiana Fever Daily Podcast for today. This is a Lantern Podcast.